Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host Flavia Barris as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur. Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Terry Rich. He is a disruptive innovator and entrepreneur with a drive for integrity and honesty. Wow, that's rare these days, right? He's worked in the trenches, survived the new business trends, and had success with generational changes. I want to talk to him about what that means. Oh, and he cracked the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history and has given away over $1 billion. He now travels the world speaking about innovation and ethics and fraud. It is time to welcome the fraud-busting, creative, and lucky Terry Rich. Terry, welcome to the show.
So nice to be here.
Terry, it's great to have you. I love that you focus on fraud and ethics and innovation. So tell us a little bit about what that means, because there's a lot of people listening who are probably scratching their head going, well, is he like some sort of a morality cop? Like, what is this guy about? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I started as a sales and marketing guy in cable television before cable was cool. So I helped start the CNNs and the MTVs and HBOs of the world. And our company, much like a Google, my own company, and started 4 different companies over the next few years, decided at 50 to retire, still in marketing and sales, and I'm the CEO at this point. And the governor called and said, would you like to run the zoo? Well, heck, I grew up on a farm. I figured giraffes can't be that much different than cows. So I ran a zoo and got it turned around the next few years. And another governor called and said, would you like to run the lottery? And the lottery is where I got into the ethics and fraud, because we figured out that a vendor of the Iowa lottery that I was CEO of had frauded us along with 17 to 40 other states. And it took us about 6 years, but we got a full confession and conviction in doing that. And so I learned a lot about internal fraud and how external fraud, you hear it about hacking, internal fraud is just as prevalent as external fraud, and talk about ways to be able to prevent that in your small business.
Right. And this is common in a small business, just like in a large organization. I mean, it doesn't have to be a statewide lottery. I know solopreneurs whose, bookkeeper or just one assistant, like one person in the company, could even be a virtual assistant, ended up defrauding in either small or big ways. I mean, it could be direct like banking fraud or unauthorized withdrawals, that kind of thing. But it could also be as simple as just overbilling or overcharging for work that wasn't done. So how do you translate what you did in sort of the big leagues, right? I'm assuming that a lottery fraud had big numbers attached to it and also was probably pretty complex. But what do you do to help small businesses avoid getting sort of ripped off internally?
Well, you're absolutely right in everything you said. And I think that it's small or big, the same principles hold true to have checks and balances within an organization. That's what we found when we busted this largest lottery fraud. One person had all the keys to the kingdom. Now let's go back to that entrepreneur that doesn't have many employees, or think of your local church or your local school district. If someone writes the checks and also writes the purchase orders, you're pretty ripe for fraud because they have all the keys to the kingdom. There are 3 elements that cause fraud in any organization. And usually that, they'll say, I didn't realize Aunt Marge would steal from us. Well, the first thing that kind of trips the trigger in an organization is financial need. Now, we all like more money, no doubt about that. But usually someone has a gambling problem, a divorce, their credit cards are maxed out. That's the financial need that tips them over the edge to even think about internal fraud. The second is opportunities. Again, if you don't have checks and balances and one person writes the purchase orders and one person then writes the checks, that pretty much opens it up once they have the financial need. But the third one is the one which is toughest to guess and toughest to control as an entrepreneur, and that's rationale. At what point does the little devil on your shoulder say, hey, go ahead, they work you too hard, you're not making enough money, go ahead, if we can get by with it, yeah, it's all right, and then you get by with it once, well, let's take a little more, and then ultimately those 3 combine to create the internal fraud.
And it's so sad that this happens, right? In society, I mean, theft, clearly there's some evil actors in the world. And again, small time and big time. What do you think this really says, in your opinion, about human nature? Let's get a little philosophical just for a moment. Do you think that given the right circumstances, most employees would commit fraud? Or do you think this is kind of a small percentage of the population who would take advantage when the opportunity knocks?
If you have the opportunity, you have the need, all those three elements, you probably will test the waters. And I saw a character count study of high school and college grads, and they asked them, have you ever stolen from your parents? Have you ever stolen from even a friend? You ever lied to your parents? And almost majority of people said, yeah, they did that sometime in their life. Yet these are the people that you're hiring to work for you. But when they are interviewed, they're asked, do you think character is big? And do you have good character? 90% or plus always said, yeah, I have good character. So even if you have the absolute best employee who's been the best employee for 5 or 10 years, if they have a major incident, a divorce, a gambling problem, drinking problem, all of the things we talked about, it sometimes puts them over the edge. But if you have the checks and balances where they can write the PO, but the president has to sign the checks, then you've created a little barrier that they know, well, if I do this, I might get caught. And if you have a policy that says if you are caught, you will be fired or you might be fired, that's another deterrent. So having those little steps there will keep the little angel on your shoulder saying, hey, we better not do this and protect your business.
Well, so this has become your passion, right? This is what you do now. You speak on fraud, you speak about ethics, and you travel the world doing it. Tell us a little bit about what that kind of a lifestyle is like to be a professional speaker and to be on the go and to, we're all about lifestyle. So Lifestyle Solopreneur Podcast centers around the concept that we can't let our work life take over our personal life to the point where we're no longer enjoying life and where our lifestyle is really suffering, and that we need to leave room in however we can for the things that matter the most to us in life. And I have found that for some entrepreneurs, the thing that matters most to them in life is their business, is what they're working on, is their passion. And that's okay too. And I think in different times of our lives, we have sort of different needs. Maybe once someone becomes a parent or a caretaker for an aging parent, or once somebody develops a passion they didn't have before, their need for balance between work and personal time may shift over the years. How do you feel about how that's factored into your own life and your own decisions about what you do for a living?
Well, I started in I grew up on a farm, so it was always work hard. You should make some money and be nice to people. And I wish I'd learned how to relax in the early days. Damon John, I'm going to quote somebody else here. Damon John, who's on Shark Tank. And I did a session a few weeks back, and I learned something new at my old age. And he said that every night he writes down the 6 things that he's going to do the next day that makes him happy. Not what he has to do or he wants to do. It's 6 things he wants to do to be able to make him happy. He wakes up the next morning and he rereads those, and then he prioritizes those the next night. So every night he goes to bed thinking what makes something that he could do the next day, whether it's just to have a fun breakfast that he likes or whatever, because when you become successful and you're working really hard, everybody wants a piece of you, and you're always trying to outdo anything you've done before as an entrepreneur to do it well. So a few years ago, when I was a lottery director working for the state, here I am, a government employee, which I'd never been before. I realized as I went to conferences, and I was president of the North American Lottery Association, that we were spending $25,000 or $50,000 for speakers to do a 1-hour keynote. And I about fell off my chair. I thought, my gosh, would this be fun to do? So I started this professional speaking job and started small and then continued to build it up. So now I get paid to travel across the world. Usually if it's overseas, first class tickets. I get the money when I leave, and then I spend a week at the location that I'm speaking at and enjoying the sights and sounds, and I do it on everybody else's dime. It's absolutely ideal. Now, it takes a while to build it up. And when I talk to entrepreneurs, when should I start my company? I always say that if you're working for someone now, continue to work for them, work nights and weekends to get your new business up so you've got cash flow enough to take care of yourself and your family. That takes all the worry out of it. So all of that combined, being able to travel the world and enjoy life, is kind of the ultimate for me right now.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that heard all of that and said, wait. I want to be a world-renowned public speaker. And then there's that almost like the brakes get put on that. And they're like, oh, wait a minute, I'm terrified of public speaking. So I'm assuming that you've always been comfortable as a speaker and being out in public. Do you think this is a career that somebody can train themselves to do if they're not a born speaker? Or is there really a certain personality type or skill set that you need to go into speaking as a career?
It's a little bit like sales. If you believe in what you're saying, it's really easy to be a public speaker because when you get up there, you're speaking from the heart and you're speaking from the soul and you do the research. Second is you have to have something that has, just like being an entrepreneur, something that has a niche that people don't know about, and you've got something that only you can do. And those two combined, I think, really give you a basis to be able to start public speaking. The hardest thing I have to do when I do public speaking is to do a small group with a lot of my friends, because then they know me as a personally, and that's a lot tougher than standing in front of 1,000, 1,500 people and doing a keynote. That's just fun.
Well, again, one person's fun is another person's nightmare, but I think it is a fantastic career. I know a lot of speakers that do that as their full-time gig, but I do find that, especially back in the day when travel was really required, and these days there's so many virtual events that travel is becoming sort of optional. I mean, there's a lot of virtual venues where you can be a keynote speaker. But for you, what are some of your favorite tips or hacks you can pass on to other aspiring or colleagues in the speaking world that you've found make your job and career easier, smoother, and gives you more ability to have balance in your career?
I think looking for traits as you watch speakers in your own realm and at conferences or whatever, what they do, what makes it good is one, once you get into it and start being able to charge, and you start with $100 for a Rotary Club, or even if it's $10 or just a free meal, you get up and get your message down and look out and see the eyes of people of what they are watching and what they're appreciating. But once you start making money, there's a National Association of National Speakers Association, which really has a lot of tools and techniques that you get a magazine every month. You can get online and learn what the ones that are really making the bucks. I have somebody that's a friend. I'm not trying to do this full time. I just want to do 2 or 3 a month and enjoy life and be with my family. So it works out pretty well. But he's making 10 grand a speech, and he's making between 100 and 120 speeches a year. That's a lot of speeches. Now that we're virtual, we charge a little bit less, but it's still the same speech. And it's kind of like being a Tom Cruise in Top Gun. You pretty much get asked the same questions. You're looking at the same audience. It's just you're doing it over and over and over. He goes through his press tours. How kind of I feel when I do my speaking. And I try to change it up, make it local, make it fit to the audience so that I'm relating to them. And it really comes out well. The final piece, though, is when you get to that point, you really want to make it. I think finding a good agent is really important, because although they take 15 to 25%, depending on the gig, they keep you organized as they move ahead.
So they're out there selling you and then keeping you organized so that you get to where you need to go, right? And that in a way is priceless.
It's very nice. The other thing that happens is you get a lot of people, once they know you're a professional speaker, they want to sell you PR. They want to sell you, hey, let us listen to your speech. Let us help you with your graphics. There's 1,000 different ways, just like any industry, that you can have people coming in to try to add to it. But I find the basics of having a good agent is as solid as anything I've done.
And for you, what's your most popular keynote topic? Or maybe if there's more than one and they're tying, tell us both. But I'm curious what you're being booked for to speak on at all of these different events.
For smaller organizations, I do, especially like chambers and hospitals and that sort of thing, I do a lot of speeches on innovation, how to come up with new ideas. And I work them through the concept of daring to dream, getting a bushel basket and think of it as different colors and sizes of grapes, get 100 different ideas, then work with a group on how to prioritize it. So everybody daring to act, in acting, you then add judgment. You don't add judgment on the opening and then closing. So that's what I do for smaller groups. The big groups, because this lottery fraud was the largest in U.S. history, that's been the most popular. Got a book already on it, and I think you may even see some sort of a major TV release of that whole story here in the next 12 months. So knowing that that's going to happen really has me gearing up to focus on that and hopefully be able to make a little more money on that if that happens, like a Tiger King or something like that.
Now, if you can pick the actor that plays you, who would you pick?
Oh, I get asked that. I used to say Wilford Brimley, but then I thought, he's dead. I better, everybody talks about Pitt or Bradley Cooper or somebody like that, but I'd just be pleased if they did a movie that was accurate and told the story, because it was a hot dog, Bigfoot, and the lottery ticket that cracked the case. And it took a lot of people to do it. It was a pretty interesting story that came through with a full confession and conviction, which when you have a major crime, as you know, not often do you get that. You have to appeal it all the way to Supreme Court, and you always doubt whether you're really right or not.
Well, that's an amazing story. I I will for sure be looking out for that. Does it have a name yet that we can look for on, do you know where it'll be released?
No, it's just started. With COVID, the shoot won't happen until this summer and fall. Although I've got another documentary when we talk about creativity that I did a TV show in 2000 called Soccer Slam. It was like World Wrestling Federation, only we use soccer players and it's full contact indoor soccer. And we did 4 shows, forgot about it, and someone found out about it about 3 months ago and did this huge national article on it. So that documentary is being shot in the next few weeks, and that kind of ties into the creativity. How do you come up with new ideas as an entrepreneur that are unique, that no one else has done? Then how do you make money on it? So the hope is that documentary will spin that off into a animated series or a new game or something like that. So always something going on.
Well, entertainment and sports, when mixed, generally is a profitable and successful venture. I've seen, at least, in our society, because we love sports, we love action, we love entertainment. That one sounds really fun too. So in your bio, it says that you have given away over $1 billion. Of course, I'm sure everyone's eyebrows went up and everyone wanted to hear more about that. So tell us a little bit more about how you've given away that amount of cash.
During the 10 years that I was lottery director, we had a lot of Powerball, Mega Million jackpots. And when you add it all together, I gave away $1 billion under my watch as lottery director. I wish I could say it was my money, but no, it was theirs. But anybody can win it if they play. So that made it kind of fun. But I saw all sorts of different people that it's kind of like if you can't handle the money before you win the $1 million jackpot, you probably aren't going to handle it real well afterwards. But many, many people, you always hear about what happens that is bad for people, but many, many people did it right as they won. And it was always fun to give that money away.
Absolutely. What a fun world to live in. And how long total were you serving in that role?
About 10 years. And I did the zoo about 6 years before that. And that was kind of interesting because it was losing $600,000. It's very, non-entrepreneur. It was run by the city, and the city really couldn't get people through the door. And when we walked in, we had to do a whole new paradigm thinking about, young kids go to zoos, but you already have 100% of them. And I think when people think of a business, you can get everybody, but how do you expand that? How do you create and innovate to get new ideas? And so we did a couple of very simple things. Instead of putting a whole lot of money in it, we started thinking, how do we get millennials? Because they don't go to the zoo. And we thought, what do millennials like? Booze. Yeah, that's right. Beer, whiskey, wine. So we started Zoo Brew at night. There are no kids allowed, just adults, a band, and all the animals out. And immediately, last year they made $250,000 just on booze. Or we tried to think, what do we have that we have here for free that we could get people to buy? And what do animals do? They all poop. So we started selling tiger poop. We found out that somebody that has deer eating their flowers in the backyard, if they spread out a little tiger poop, deers wouldn't bother at all. So all of a sudden, we're selling $25,000 worth of tiger poop in gallon jugs.
Well, one man's trash, another's treasure, right? That's fantastic.
You probably didn't know that story was coming at you there.
No, I didn't. But, we have a cat, or 2 cats actually in our household, and recently saw that they're now making cat litter out of almond hulls, like the shells for almonds.
Ooh,
they found a way to repurpose that into this like little bits of cat litter. And I just feel like there is so much innovation in business. That's what makes things fun. And people just don't stop innovating. I've often said that it's sort of a two-sided coin because it's a curse, but a blessing that human beings, they're always curious and never satisfied. And it's a downside because that lack of satisfaction and just kind of saying, oh, I have enough. This is enough. I'm just going to sit and enjoy is something that is very hard for people to do. Most people aspire, they accomplish, and then they want the next level, the next level, the next level. So that's this drive to consistently be better, do more. And then people are just curious. I mean, we never stop exploring. We want to know, well, what is on Mars? And how does this plant do this thing it does? Or how can we solve this problem? And those two things make people have a hard time relaxing and just enjoying life and like living in the now. But then they also keep humanity evolving and just becoming more and more.
You hit the nail right on the head. And you know what? I found success breeds success. That once you feel it, once you're in on it, I have an expression, happiness happens on the way to success. My dad said, when you turn 62, go work for somebody. When you turn 62, you're going to be happy because you can retire, you can get on Social Security. And at 40, I had all of my goals met, financially, personally, all that. And I realized happiness doesn't happen at the end of your goal. Happiness happens on the way of what made it fun when you're doing that. And often entrepreneurs believe that once, you mentioned this just a second ago, that once you've had success, why do I need to change it? Why should I change it? Well, if you look at think if you were a taxi cab driver, and that's a pretty good innovation. Everybody makes a lot of money. And then all of a sudden Uber comes along, or TV when they only had 4 channels. They laughed at us when they said, who is going to buy for $6 more TV channels? You already have 4. You don't need any more. So change is so important. And what the ultimate lesson that I learned in those 2 stories was that when you have success, you take a portion of it. Don't bet I bet the house on the early days of being an entrepreneur, but once you get to success, take 10% and keep an R&D development group, or look for the new ways to change your business so that you can continue to innovate and look for new audiences. Otherwise, you just won't grow. Think about if you had a banana ice cream store and you had 100 customers cash flowed you, and you work 3 years and you finally get to 100. So you kick back, and what happens? People die, people go away, people who don't like banana ice cream don't show up. So you got to add flavors. So changing up all the time and looking for new ways to do what you're doing today is really, really important if you want to succeed in the entrepreneurial world.
Amen to that. And you know what's so interesting is that people, they do want to innovate, and they are curious. They do want to try new things, but not everybody, like you said, stops to make it a priority and fund it. And I love what you said about putting 10% aside as sort of this future, the imagination fund, or, whatever you want to call it, but that innovation fund, so that you can actually put new ideas into effect and do something amazing with it. So you're formerly, you said, in a farmer and in agriculture, but you're no longer in that world. Is that right?
That's right. After I got out of college, I went right to the cable television realm.
Well, everyone that I know, and I actually have several clients who don't know each other. So interestingly, when you work in real estate, you sometimes, like me, do end up with some real estate clients who are in the ag world, in the agriculture world. I have never met a farming family that I didn't love, like just the best people. So I don't know, is it just that I've been lucky and have just run into the best of the farmers, or is farming in that world something that creates very well-balanced and grounded people, no pun intended, but kind of people of the earth?
I think you learn a work ethic, and there's a family. I'm not sure that the farming communities and the style that we all grew up with, was absolutely ideal for learning how to work hard, be kind to people, all those sort of things, are much of an image of what's happening in the United States today. So I think anytime I could hire a farm kid, I tried to, but let's go back to the idea of having 100 new ideas and making it work if you're brainstorming. In today's world, everybody can't look like, if you're brainstorming with 8 people, you don't want everybody to look alike, feel alike, be the same age, be the same demographic overall, because today's world is so diverse that you need to be able to have all of the ideas come together to enhance your audience and your clients and the money you're going to make in as diverse a world as there is, because there might be a better opportunity in a different direction as you're headed. So I'm a believer in the farm community and what it taught us, but I think we're probably in a different world today that we've got to get all the diverse ideas together and see what our biggest opportunities are.
I love that you call them farm kids. That's great. There's an innovation idea for you. You can start a monster.com of the old year Upwork or one of those job boards, and it could just be farm kids. And it's for everyone who's got a farming background looking for a job.
I like it. I've got one other on an entrepreneur that I think I started 4 different companies. And another lesson that I learned is when you're thinking about starting a company, especially if you're going to take a whole bunch of your savings to start it, because it's just going to work, is the idea of cash flow. Having 2 to 3 years of cash flow, not just going into it. I didn't understand how important cash flow is. In fact, any boards that I'm on now, and I hear other board members for small entrepreneurial companies talk about looking at the cash flow of a company before they look at the P&L, not the P&L, but before they look at the balance sheet, because you've got to have cash or your business is going to go out. So make sure you've got some good money set aside to get you through a year or two, because most people try and fail. For me, it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. I mean, there's a feeling that you get by just trying it and getting out there and doing something. And most people fail and then quit. A good example, my granddaughter came over. She was a year and 4 months, and she pulled herself up on the couch. And what'd she do? She took her first step, and then boom, she fell over. She failed. Well, she didn't just quit. She pulled herself over and took 2 steps, and boom, fell again. And then 3, then 4, and now she's running all over the place. And most people don't realize when they went to the moon, they were off course over 90% of the time. And most of us, especially if you're a project manager, say, okay, this is the date this is going to get done. This is when this is going to get done. This is going to be done. If they'd have done that with that space shot to the moon, it'd have been 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Okay, we're going to talk to you in 2 months. Everything's set. But no, they adjusted 90% of the time. So the importance of all that is if you fail once, learn from it and keep it going. If it's a passion you have, you can probably adjust and make it work.
For sure. We can all course correct along the way. But I mean, you'd laugh at someone if they said little tiny baby. Let's say you could communicate with this little baby. And if the baby communicated to you, maybe telepathically, they don't speak yet, and said, I am not taking a single step until I know that I can walk perfectly when I do it. That's just, it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's all a process and we grow. And you're right. We have to give it a shot before we can perfect it. I mean, until you like throw the big block of clay on the turntable, you're not going to be able to make this like beautiful pottery, right? You've got to start with the rough stuff. I agree with you 100%.
Well said.
In your bio, it says that you've had success with generational changes. I want to dig into that. What does that mean?
That means that, let's go back to, if I could have done an 8-track or I did a TV show in the 80s and 90s, worked on something, times change. And so each generation is a different audience. Each generation poses a positive way to look at things completely different and to have new ideas. And so each day, as I'm watching TV, looking at new products, looking at ways of what would I like to do next and make it fun, I try to look at what the next generation is focused on and how they're doing things, and not focus on, well, that's the way I did it, by golly, when I grew up, so I need to do it today. So the success in the later years, you see people who make a lot of money and then all of a sudden at 40, they burn out and they can't do it anymore because they haven't thought of the changes to make it work. I've tried to always be looking for where's the next step and what's the next thing that would be just as fun as the last one. Now, if it's not fun, you just as well quit. And here's my second story. I went to a deal called Life is Good. The guys that started Life is Good. It's a t-shirt with kind of a stick figure on it, if you've not seen it. And
I know the one. Yep, I know the one.
They told the story how their employees would come to a meeting and everybody's head would be down and say, I have to go to this meeting, or I have to get this project done. Oh, I have to do this. And they called everybody and said, this stops right now. That's negative. We're going to change have to get. And everybody listening right now, if you ever say that I have to do something, just change the word from have to get. And they said the entire company's attitude went from negative to positive. Because like today, I got to do this. Now I could have walked in and said, tell somebody I have to go do this podcast. No, I get to go do it. I'm having fun. I don't get many opportunities to talk to people all over the world and people who are doing well in life, because I always learn something too.
Well, I'm glad that you got to do this, and I'm glad that you said yes. That's another thing too, is we have to learn what to say yes to, what to say no to, when to preserve our boundaries. But I feel very honored that you chose to be with us at the Lifestyle Solopreneur podcast today, because I have learned a lot. One thing I want to learn from you, because you do keep an eye on these generational trends and changes. And I've had this conversation with people. How will today's kids grow up in a post-COVID world with, are they going to be germaphobes? Are they going to live much more isolated, much more virtual lives? Because that was during their formative years. They spent a whole year doing, Zoom school and being online more than offline when it comes to schooling. And again, it varies around the world. Not every kid had that experience. For many kids, life didn't change too much in the last year. Maybe they lived in a place that didn't do lockdowns. But what do you think is going to come of all this from a generational viewpoint?
I think history tells a little bit of it. Think about parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who went through a world war, that went through the old Black Plague in the real old days, or through 1968, all the riots and assassinations and bombings that went through that. We all lived. It's how do you ground yourself in around friends and family to feel that you're not isolated, alone, and that the world is coming to an end. In today's society, the news comes at us so fast when something happens and so strong that it feels overwhelming. I think earlier, the word, the real old days, somebody had to come across as a messenger to tell you what's going on. And then as we got radio, it seemed a little more immediate, but still it was once a day when you listened to the news, or TV, it was at 5:30 or 10 o'clock at night. Today, it's just bombarding us. So I think that the new generation will have such a wealth of intelligence and ultimately artificial intelligence in the jobs that they have, that it will give them an opportunity to do worldwide business, where in the old days you did small town business.
Well said. And I guess it all remains to be seen. I'm excited for the future. I'm an eternal optimist. I often tell people, I had a client once pick up on something I said. They actually sent me a plaque. And the plaque says, it's got my name, Flavia Barris. And then under it, it says professional pessimist, which is kind of an inside joke, because I once told them after we had gone over all of the possible downsides that can happen with a particular transaction and deal we were working on. I'm a lawyer, I'm a business lawyer. And so I'd gone over all the sort of potential pitfalls and, bumps in the road and how we can guard against them. And they said, wow, we didn't even think of half of this stuff, but you're right. Like all this can happen. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of a professional pessimist. Like you're paying me to look at all the possible bad outcomes, but the optimism you can have for free. Like that, I don't charge for. And they laughed. And then after that deal closed, they sent me this little plaque. And I keep it on my desk and I remind myself that, yeah, I'm a professional pessimist, but really as a person in my personal life, I am an optimist. And so for me, that is one of the work-life balance points that I have to maintain because I never want to become a pessimist in my personal life. And so I am optimistic that society will get through everything we've been going through for the last year. And this will have made us stronger and better, like all illness generally does, right? Hopefully our body fights it off and then we're now stronger. And so as a society, I hope we can do that too. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that have loved this connection with you. How can someone connect with you further? How can they keep the conversation going? Where can they find you to connect?
The easiest is the website, Terry, Terry Speaks, terryspeaks.com.
Terry certainly does speak and speaks about some very interesting, fascinating, and entertaining things. So Terry, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I hope to have you back someday. I
appreciate that. And to bring it all around, you talked about negative versus positive thoughts. When you dare to dream and you get those 100 ideas, that's where you look to the professionals, the lawyers, the accountants, and all of those to give the check and balances to your ideas so that as a team, you can move ahead and then act on that to be just a great entrepreneur. I appreciate all of your time, and I've learned a few new things. And as you can see, we probably gave 100 ideas in different ways today, and I hope just one will help out your audience.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness, but money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.